Greetings. Thank you for tuning into this 2021 General Election Candidate Forum for the Olympia City Council positions numbers 5, 6, and 7. This forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Thurston County, along with Thurston Community Media and our co-sponsors, the South Puget Sound chapter of the Asian Pacific Islanders Coalition and the Thurston Climate Action Team. This forum is being held electronically due to COVID-19. Candidates, moderators, and timekeepers are all participating via Zoom with the help of TC Media. First, I would like to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. The League works on vital issues of concern to its members and the public, and it is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government. The League registers new voters, encourages everyone to vote, studies issues, and advocates for its positions with the legislature and other governmental bodies. Despite its name, the League is open to everyone over the age of 16. I am Donna Cobb from the League, and I will be moderating this forum. Kelsey Monaco is the timekeeper. Candidates for position 5 are Lisa Parshley and Talauna Reed. The candidates for position 6 are Dante Payne and Gauny. For position 7, the candidates are Jim Cooper and Spence Weigand. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer a series of questions. The first question will be directed to candidates in alphabetical order. After that, the order will be rotated so each candidate has a chance to answer first. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. The timekeeper will show you a sign when you have 30 seconds left, and then will show a stop sign when your time is up. If you don't see the sign, I will tell you when your time is up. After my questions, each candidate will have an opportunity to ask their opponent a question. Finally, each candidate will have 1 minute for closing statements. Mr. Cooper will answer the first question, followed by Mr. Gauny, Ms. Parshley, Mr. Payne, Ms. Reed, and Mr. Weigand. Please let me know if you need me to repeat a question. Okay, Jim Cooper. One of the city's goals is permanent housing solutions for the homeless. What should the city of Olympia do for residents who might not be able to obtain or keep permanent housing?
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for doing this important public service. That's the hardest question that you could possibly ask and nearly impossible to answer in a minute. But we have to be focused on the entire economy and how it serves our low-income families. We have to build housing at all levels, including permanent supportive housing for our most vulnerable neighbors. You know, once we have enough permanent supportive housing in place and the new shelter coming online this winter, we'll have a better opportunity to be done having camps spread around our community. And I think that we're moving towards that in a significant way. So it's the most complex question, and it's not something that's focused just on Olympia. It's a national problem, and it ties directly to inequities around wage and income.
Thank you. Gauny?
Yes, Donna, thanks for the opportunity to appear before you in the League of Women Voters. I appreciate this is a very, as Jim pointed out, very complex question. There are a lot of challenges to providing affordable housing. What I see largely is a supply issue right now as well. We've had anti-growth policies in this community for the last 30 years. We're now paying current day wages, salaries, and material costs to catch up with those gaps over the last 30 years. I think our policy needs to be to get more affordable housing through public-private partnerships, building in and up along major thoroughfares where transportation and access to resources enable all parts of our community to get around and get to the resources that are needed. Other than that, I think we really need to look at who we're attracting to our communities and how we can help. And we do need to bring private business in as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Parshley?
Thank you. Yes, a very complex question that we have been delving into. I would say, first off, it is complex and it's a multifactorial with one very important part that we often don't talk about, and that is achieving livable wages for the people that live in our area through getting training, trade training, middle class incomes, The second is Olympia had heard this summer and passed an action plan, housing action plan, which includes providing permanent affordable housing through adequate funding and private-public partnerships and leveraging city properties and working to ensure that we actually have permanently affordable housing. That means 30% of the incomes. And then continuing to keep the eye on the ball, which is, this is multifactorial. We have to work on all of it at once.
Thank you. Dante Payne?
Hi, Donna, and thank you to Thurston Community Media and to the League of Women Voters for having us this morning. I would say that some of the existing barriers, I believe, right now to permanent supportive housing has in large part have to do with a lot of community members not understanding exactly what permanent supportive housing is. And that means that folks have the resources available to them to be able to become participants of our community once again. They're able to find work, perhaps counseling services if they need it. And so for me, I believe that we can do this through public-private partnerships. We also need to pay people a livable wage. People should absolutely be spending less than 30% of their income on housing. And also, we need to look at barriers. What barriers exist for people to attain this permanent supportive housing, and making sure that we're doing our best to reduce those barriers.
Talauna Reed?
Sorry about that. So thank you for having me. And regarding obtaining and keeping housing, I think that the city really needs to focus on policies that protect renters. We have a large number of folks here who are renters, and if we don't put policies in place to protect them from losing their housing, we're going to be stuck in the same situation. As it sits now, folks who are living in the encampments are not being provided with the proper services. There aren't service providers out there to assess their needs. And until that happens, again, folks will continue to stay in their situation, and this crisis won't resolve. It's not going to resolve.
Thank you. Spence Weigand.
Thank you, Donna. The lack of affordable housing in our city is an issue right now and is going to get worse probably before it gets better. It is a supply versus demand issue that we are anticipating growing over the next 25 years by 30,000 residents, and that's going to require 14,000 additional housing stock units. We have to build more, build up, not out, and do it along the main transit thoroughfares so that we can take advantage of public transit. What we need to take a hard look at, I think, is how to encourage as a city private development and with public partnerships as well to increase the housing stock.
Okay, thank you. Next question goes to Corey Gauny. Many cities offer tax exemptions for multifamily developments. In Olympia, developers are given two options. Most developers choose the option of a shorter-term tax exemption that does not require the provision of affordable housing units. Do you think this should be changed, and why or why not?
Donna, that is a very long question. Could you please repeat it?
Of course. Corey Gauny, many cities offer tax exemptions for multifamily development. In Olympia, developers are given two options. Most developers choose the option of a shorter-term tax exemption that does not require the provision of affordable housing units. Do you think this should be changed, and why or why not?
Thanks for the question, Donna. I believe housing, we need to look at housing as in separate markets: low-income housing, affordable housing, middle-income housing, high-income housing. When we look at ecosystems, how similar to an ecosystem, our housing in those different markets should be spread throughout our community. We need to think strategically, get with the city planner, and look at where we need to fill in for some low-income or affordable housing units. I think we leave the options open to what they currently are. And when we have too much of a certain type of building within a certain segment, then we need to adjust and say, no, we're going to need some affordable housing in these sectors of our community. What we don't want to do is create a specific section of our community where it's all low-income housing. I think this, again, like a healthy ecosystem, needs to be scattered throughout our community. And we would implement those options, or the city could use those options to incentivize one way or another if we're not meeting those goals. Thank you.
Lisa Parshley.
Excellent question. When we enacted the 8-year multifamily tax exemption, we were expecting over 5,000 people to move into downtown. And we were having no development. The 8-year multifamily tax exemption resulted in our very first new multifamily development. But like our housing action plan says, we need to maintain forward movement in building of housing of all kinds. However, I do believe right now we have adequate building downtown of market rate. I do think we should look into changing our 8-year multifamily tax exemption into the biggest gap that our gap analysis showed, which is the workforce housing, from about 60 to 80% average median income to about 125% average median income, so we can have people live where they work.
Dante Payne.
Yes, thank you, Donna, for that question. I would have to agree with Councilmember Parshley on this. I think that the city of Olympia is facing a housing affordability crisis. The county is facing this crisis, and frankly, the state is facing this crisis. And so we absolutely should be looking at ways to amend the existing statute to incentivize developers and encourage them to build more affordable units. We do have the 8-year model and the 12-year model as well. And I believe that many developers have taken the 8-year model so that they do not have to build a certain number of units. And because we are in a state of this affordability crisis, I think we seriously need to take a look at that so that we can see some substantial growth in the affordability front.
Talauna.
So yes, we need affordable housing impact fees to be adopted. What we have in front of us is a situation with homelessness where it isn't decreasing. We need to immediately shift our priorities so that we are prioritizing affordable housing for service workers, healthcare workers, and the other folks that are the backbone of this community. As developers gain opportunities to build, they should be required to reinvest in our community and pay for the low-income housing. We have to stop giving the tax exemptions to those developers, and when we make sure that all of the developments go through rigorous environmental impact fees, we are again protecting the environment. We need to also look at the generational impact of development projects that ensure the health of our communities for future generations, and stay in alignment with what we need and what is in front of us right now.
Spence Weigand.
Thank you. I am in support of the multifamily tax exemptions. It wasn't too long ago when we had nothing but subsidized housing downtown. And it's important to our local businesses that there are people living downtown and spending money there. If we need to tweak or alter that exemption, it's certainly worth investigating. But the bottom line is we need housing of all sorts. And one of the things we could consider is taking a look at elimination or reduction of the impact fees that developers face when they go to develop a project. Those always get passed on to the end user. And that's one of the reasons that Olympia has an affordable housing crisis, and it is a crisis.
Thank you. Jim Cooper.
Yes. So as others have alluded to, we have a supply problem, and it's a supply problem of housing at all levels. And so we cannot afford to turn off any incentive for any type of housing, and we need more incentives for affordable housing, particularly out in the neighborhoods. Folks have mentioned the 8-year exemption for property tax and the 12-year for affordable housing. We also have an exemption for impact fees that greatly reduces them for affordable housing. The other tools we're looking at is how to incentivize the more density out in the neighborhoods with ADUs and such. But as far as the multifamily tax exemption, to me, that should be tied directly to the vacancy rate. And we do not have a healthy vacancy rate. We are running less than 2% vacancy. And to be healthy in our housing market, it needs to be about 5%. And so I would be in favor of a performance indicator for that tool that turns it on and off based on the vacancy rate in the city of Olympia. And actually, these are our regional problems, and everyone needs to be doing the same things.
Thank you. Next question. Lisa Parshley, what is your position on the city's resolution regarding the Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary draft environmental impact statement?
Thank you. It's a great question. This has been long overdue to get to this point. I serve not only the city of Olympia, but I serve on the Lot Water Treatment Board. And consequently, I have gotten very good at understanding water quality in Bud Inlet, because Lot cannot discharge into Bud Inlet without having improved water quality. Looking at the 3 options for the EIS, I stand with estuary because it is the only one that will actually provide an improved water quality, which will allow Lot and the wildlife, our salmon, our Squaxin tribes, to actually enjoy an improved water quality in Bud Inlet. Just to let you know, if Lot cannot discharge into Bud Inlet, we're not just talking about the hundreds of millions of dollars to correct what's wrong with the lake. We're talking about billions of dollars to move Lot out of downtown and discharge the water somewhere else. I stand firmly with estuary. We need to own it and look at the management.
Dante Payne.
Thank you, Donna. I share that position. I also support the return of Capitol Lake to an estuary. I think it's important if we in Olympia, we take pride in the fact that we consider ourselves to be environmental stewards. And I think that means letting the lake be returned to its natural state so that we can improve the water quality. We can improve the quality of life for our marine life as well. And this is also a position that is shared by the Squaxin Island tribe. And too often in government, we have frankly treated our tribal communities as stakeholders and not as governments in their own right. And I think that this is an example of how we have shared this position government to government to make some substantial progress on the environmental front for our community.
Thank you. Talauna Reed.
So I support the estuary because this is what our local tribes have been saying for years. And we need to center the indigenous communities as the original caretakers of our land. And, the debate whether to restore the Deschutes estuary or maintain it has lasted for a long time. Meanwhile, our quality and conditions of the lake and the adjacent Bud Inlet have declined rapidly. We need to, I 100% support restoring it and continuing to keep our indigenous neighbors at the table to help make future decisions. That is part of the original treaty, and we need to stand on that.
Thank you. Spence Weigand.
Yes, thank you for the question. I am still digging deep into this one. Initially was restore the lake, a proponent, but understand the importance of estuaries to ecosystems. I'd like to know a little bit more about the cost of the 3 options. They've been laid out there, but I haven't seen much evidence of what it's going to cost to maintain down the line. And I would like to see where that budget numbers come in and what the downside is. I would like to hear from all 3 of the options as well.
Thank you. Jim Cooper.
Thank you. The Olympia City Council and the Squaxin Island Tribal Council are unanimous that the estuary is the only option supported by the science. It's the least expensive option, and the environmental impact statement lays out 30 years of maintenance and management for all 3 options. Again, it's not easy though, because it will be expensive, and we have to have a long-term sediment management plan so we can keep our port and our marinas open. Thankfully, this is not rocket science. We live on a coast with rivers flowing sediment out, up and down from California to the Canadian border. And there's plenty of examples of ports and marinas having ongoing dredging operations that are paid for by the berth rental in the marinas. So I'm excited to see that outcome, and I'm excited to partner with the tribal council in a government-to-government relationship. And frankly, the state is in a massive violation of the Federal Clean Water Act. So they need to get up their game and fix and restore the mouth of the Deschutes River.
Corey Gauny.
Thanks for the question, Donna. I've looked into several options of these. My number one concern always is who are we impacting with the decisions we make? The Nisqually Delta was a great example of returning an area to an estuary, and had fabulous impacts on the salmon runs there. Me being a fisherman, I really want to see our natural habitat restored. One of my concerns is what Jim Cooper had mentioned about the berth fees. We have people living as affordable housing choices in our marinas. We're going to increase their rent through these fees. This really needs to be thought out. I tend to lean more towards the estuary option, although I also like the deli option, the hybrid option, but it is the most expensive. My last concern with the estuary option is making sure that we still have enough traffic across the Fifth Avenue Bridge that we are able to keep traffic going, because there will be huge impacts there. Thank you.
Dante Payne. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the last of those response to those questions. So Dante Payne, you have the next question. The COVID-19 pandemic is continuing to cause a severe health crisis in the country and in Thurston County. What is your position regarding Governor Inslee's mask and vaccination mandate for state employees? And do you think city employees should be required to be vaccinated?
Thank you, Donna, for this question. It's a very important one that I don't believe I've been asked at any point on the campaign trail so far. I share the governor's position on this. I think that it is very important that we continue to mask up and that we continue to encourage Washingtonians to be vaccinated. With the city of Olympia, I also believe that we should take the lead of the county as well. And the city manager has released a statement on this, and I do believe that city employees should absolutely be vaccinated. And I think it's going to be important in order for us to be able to continue to combat the virus and get on the other side of this.
Thank you. Talauna Reed.
So I support the local and state mask mandates. Wearing a mask has been scientifically proven to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I received a phone call last night that my brother is on life support due to COVID-19. He has complete respiratory and kidney failure and is not expected to make it. Sadly, he wasn't vaccinated. And this is why it's so close to my heart. And I lost another relative also earlier this year. I would say that the unfortunate aspect of this mandate is that it has been left up to underpaid service industry employees to be the sole enforcement of such mandates. Our service industry workers are already one of the highest risk groups to be expected to now bear the brunt of enforcing mask mandates. And it's too much. We need to make them mandatory.
Thank you. Spence Weigand.
I also support Governor Inslee's vaccine mandate for the state employees and would encourage the city to look into that as well. I do have concerns, however, with those that will draw a line in the sand and not get vaccinated and lose their jobs, what impact that will have on their lives, our economy, and how we are going to staff positions for the people that will leave in Exodus. I'm not sure that's been really looked hard at. Thank you.
Jim Cooper.
Our healthcare system is breaking. It's in crisis. It was overloaded before the pandemic. Yesterday, we had the largest number of deaths in Thurston County under the pandemic. And the only option, the only science is vaccinations and masking. Even the weekly testing requirements are not that helpful in the conversation. In the city of Olympia, the employees are required to be vaccinated. And also, this is a federal mandate from the President of the United States, and the Department of Labor will help with the enforcement. I'm also supportive of the actions that have been taken in Jefferson, Calallam, and King counties to require vaccination in all indoor public spaces. This is about being a community member, being a good member of society, and thinking about others before yourself. I get it that there are people that are medically vulnerable, that is not a decision that they can make, but everybody else needs to be masked and vaccinated until this pandemic slows down.
Corey Gauny.
Well, statistics have shown that 70% of the people are vaccinated right now, that 70% agree with the vaccination, agree with vaccinating. Myself, I believe it is a choice between the individual, their healthcare provider, and their religious and spiritual guider. Those decisions belong with those individuals. With that said, I was an emergency responder for 22 and a half years, and I was in the military. I have taken vaccines. I have gotten vaccines where they are required. I still believe that the individual has a choice. As far as the mask mandates go, we know that those are all right. Those work. They are helping prevent the spread. I think we all take responsibility for our actions and putting on our masks and respecting the areas around where other people are. I am not for a mandate that says everybody must be vaccinated. There should be the exemptions, which the governor's orders did allow for. I'm curious as to, again, as Spence pointed out, how many people are not going to, and the downstream impacts of those decisions.
Thank you. Lisa Parshley.
Sorry about that. First, Ms. Reed, I am very sorry for your brother. That's heartbreaking. I'm a medical professional. I'm a trained scientist. I'm always going to side with science over politics. When we have a pandemic that started out before the vaccine for everybody, now we know this pandemic has become a pandemic of unvaccinated. We also know that masks work. It's one of the only things that we have shown works, especially two-layered. The original variant of COVID, one person could spread it to two. Now we know that Delta virus, one person can spread it to 9. There is really no option. I stand with the governor, I stand with President Biden, and I stand with our city manager who made this mask mandate and vaccine. I also think Jefferson County and Seattle, where you have to have vaccines to go into public areas and prove that, is absolutely required. I stand with science. This isn't political. This is about people's lives.
Thank you. The next question is for Talauna Reed. The median sales price for a house in Thurston County has increased by about 20% in the last year to almost $500,000. What would you do to encourage the development of housing that is affordable to low and moderate income families?
So I think that we need to continue to push market rate affordable housing, and housing that's affordable for folks to live on Social Security and disability, for making minimum wage, for folks who currently have no resources at all. We need to take as many measures as possible, and we need to actually adopt policies that support this, that support the increase in housing prices, that support protecting the increase in housing rates, and support the needs of our family. We can't fix any of the problems that we're having without the proper policies in place, and we just need to do that.
Thank you. Spence Weigand.
Donna, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. The median sales price for a house in Thurston County has increased by about 20% in the last year to almost $500,000. What would you do to encourage the development of housing that is affordable to low and moderate income families?
Well, first of all, you can't get there without just increasing the housing stock overall. It's a little bit unclear if what you're asking is related to home ownership or rental, but Olympia is now half of its citizens are renters. And again, I think you need to build up and not out rather, on the main corridors of our city, Martin, Pacific, Harrison, Mud Bay, etc., and let the market take care of itself. A lot of that pressure is from Portland and Seattle and people moving into our area. It is not investors that are buying properties up. It is just Olympia is an attractive place, and COVID has taught us how important it is to be at home. So build, build, build. That's the message.
Thank you. Jim Cooper?
Thank you. I agree with my opponent. This is a supply problem. We need to build at all levels of income, and we need to do as much as we can for a long time and watch that vacancy rate until it comes up. I'm also, we've focused really on those high density corridors. That's where the incentives lie, and recently the city council expanded them out Harrison and out Martin Way, and have seen projects developing in those areas. So it's about spreading it around the community. The other large opportunity we have is how to incentivize those smaller units in the neighborhood. My idea that I've seen working in other communities is for the city to provide a loan for the impact fees and the general facilities charges that will be waived after 2 years if you keep somebody that's low income as a renter. We also need to find more mechanisms for home ownership.
Thank you. Corey Gauny?
Yes, Don, could you please repeat the question again?
Sure.
I think I got it, but I just want to make sure.
The median sales price for a house in Thurston County has increased by about 20% in the past year to almost $500,000. What would you do to encourage the development of housing that is affordable to low and moderate income families?
I think one of the things we absolutely have to do, Donna, is look at the barriers. What Jim had pointed out, Mr. Cooper pointed out, looking at impact fees, we need to look at all the barriers to development that we currently have. Not to say that they're bad, but to be realistic about those barriers, environmental restrictions, impact fees, taxes, and what are we going to incentivize to help builders around those? Because those costs from those barriers are passed directly on to the consumers when we're talking about affordable housing. So we need to make sure, take a real good look at all the barriers that increase the cost for housing. Again, these influences in our housing market are from Seattle, Portland, and the increase in availability to telework. People are moving to Olympia because it's a great place. This is driving up our prices. This is not some nefarious scheme to undermine and raise the prices in our community. We built a great community and people are coming here. So we need to look at how we're going to continue to build more housing. Be honest about our barriers. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Parshley?
This is an excellent question. I will be a broken record to a degree. I stand by the Olympia Housing Action Plan. I also do agree with several of the speakers here, including my councilmate, Jim Cooper. This is a supply and demand. We have to build at all levels. So that's part of our action plan. We have to make sure that we don't get in the way of market rate housing, but at the same time, incentivize and encourage affordable housing. We also need to do regional projects. This has to be regional. It can't just be Olympia. To give Cooper, Councilmember Cooper, some props here, he and our pretty much put together the Regional Housing Council. And this council could put forward projects that all of us contribute to, leveraging more money and make them affordable. The last thing I'm going to put is a shout out there. Olympia has put in a home fund. We voted for it for over 60% of the people here. We have built so far over 248 permanently affordable housing units. We need to make sure the county does the same thing. We need to do all of it. It's a yes and.
Thank you. Dante Payne.
Yes, thank you, Donna, for this question. I would say that, yes, we need to build responsibly, but we need to build more. But with building responsibly means that we also need to think about the environmental considerations and the accessibility considerations that comes with building. We also need to make sure that we are building responsibly by diversifying what it means to build, diversifying our housing supply. So we cannot just continue to build single family homes and condos. We need to look at ways that we have, what existing properties do we have that we could potentially use to help diversify our housing supply and enact the housing action plan that the city has, which I absolutely support.
Thank you. Okay. The candidates will now have an opportunity to ask their opponent a question. The question should not take any longer than 30 seconds to ask, and the candidates will then have 1 minute to respond. Mr. Weigand, do you have a question for Mr. Cooper?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Donna. Mr. Cooper, the 2021 City of Olympia sponsored community engagement and public opinion poll reported that 76% of respondents did not feel safe downtown at night, 15% worse than the same poll from 4 years ago asking the same questions. The perceptions of safety downtown are getting worse on your watch. I will remind you and others that our downtown, aside from being a destination for shopping, dining, and recreation, is also a neighborhood for many of our citizens. And I find it hard to believe that you would accept these conditions in your own neighborhood without a lot of foot stomping and caterwauling. As the longest tenured council person of over 10 years.
Do you have a question?
Do you feel public safety is our city's #1 issue? And if so, what do you plan to do about it? If not, what do you see as our city's #1 issue?
Thank you, Spence. It's nice to meet you.
You as
I
well.
wish we could do this in person. So to me, absolutely. Like, I agree. In fact, it's all over the neighborhood and everyone in our community is frustrated. We are governing in the middle of 5 emergencies and the perception of safety is what it's all about. We heard the survey. The reason we do the survey is to validate the work we're doing and improve. And, you know, I think largely there's a communication issue, but there are safety issues and people have real concerns. I have them in my own neighborhood. I run into people at the doors that have them, and we're all on the same page. We have some issues that we need to deal with as a community, but this is not about crime. This is about me being one guy and us having a massive inequity and economic insecurity throughout our society, driven by institutional racism, by the way. You know, combined with the most simultaneous emergencies modern people have ever experienced. We're doing our absolute best and with a world-class staff, and I'm open to any new ideas that anyone has.
Mr. Cooper, do you have a question for Mr. Weigand?
Thank you, yes. Mr. Weigand, Olympia is in a tough spot right now with our police outgunned on our own streets because we are the state capital near Olympia and Portland. Lacey, Tumwater, and the Thurston County Sheriff have all gotten out of the riot control business and will not likely respond when we need them most. How would you approach this monumental problem?
I think that going back to the public safety issue, which I think is huge in people's minds, and is one of the drums I would like to beat, that we need a more consistent law enforcement presence downtown. The same survey I quoted earlier said that 70% of our citizens would like to see a higher police presence downtown. Walking patrol. I would like to see the walking patrol be a committed and dedicated service that law enforcement provides to the downtown businesses and citizens. Too often, when we're short-staffed, they're pulled away to do other things. I think we can do other things to have more encouragement of public safety downtown. I'd like to see a better lighting program. If we have problem alleys that are people are defecating in, then we should shut them down or close them off, and we can do more with landscaping to discourage drug use and crime downtown as well. Public safety is huge, and we can do a lot just by being present and visible.
Thank you.
Mr. Gauny, do you have a question for Mr. Payne?
Yes, Donna, I do. Thank you. Dante, nice to meet you again. See you again. 87% of Olympians are not satisfied with the city's response to homelessness. 70% want to see a more police presence. You, in running, have said that you chose this open seat because you agree with the current decisions of the city council in moving our city forward. I believe you've also said that Renetta Rollins is a role model in her, or an inspiration in her homeless response. I want to know what would make you more than just a surrogate of filling Renetta Rollins's role in addressing homelessness.
Sure. Thank you, Corey, for this question. Yes, I do understand that many people, 80% of residents in our city, are disappointed with the response to homelessness. But I will add that the city of Olympia is leading on this front. We do not have the assistance in large part from our neighboring cities of Lacey and Tumwater. The city of Olympia is actually doing a lot in this regard. And frankly, the survey, with the 80%, that could speak to a number of frustrations amongst our constituents, but it doesn't necessarily speak to the fact that they disagree with the city's approach necessarily. And so I absolutely feel that we need to continue leading on this issue as a city and doing our part, but bringing our neighboring cities along. And perhaps that will help change people's feelings on how we are addressing the issue in the region.
Ms. Parshley, do you have a question for Ms. Reed?
I absolutely do. We have already been asked a question about the Capitol Lake environmental statement and the options that we prefer. But what we haven't talked about is how we're going to manage this after the original restoration of the particular option, because we're still going to be on the hook for between $100 and $300 million over the next 30 years after the lake or the estuary is restored. Can you give me some ideas of how this is going to look in your book and how we can regionally afford this amount of money?
I actually don't have any ideas that come to mind. And as an individual who's been on the council for quite some time and has had this issue in front of them, I would hope that there are things that have been in, plans that you've looked, that have been sought after by the city to address this, the financial burden that may come with it. I honestly don't. I don't have enough information regarding regarding how this system works. But thank you for your question.
And Ms. Reed, do you have a question for Ms. Parshley?
I do. Hi, Lisa. As a direct service provider for our homeless community, part of my duties is doing outreach at the various encampments and around town. And in fact, I was in the jungle just this past week. For me, this has been an eye-opening and often tragic thing to witness. Lisa, as a city council member, describe your personal experiences of visiting the various encampments throughout the city and what actions you've taken to work directly face-to-face with our houseless neighbors to find solutions to our housing crisis.
Thank you. And thank you for your honesty on my question. I appreciate that. That's the first step we have to do as city council, is know when we need more information. So I appreciate that. I have actually visited the jungle several times. I have visited Nickerson Street. As a matter of fact, Renetta Rollins, in our first year on council, were invited to Nickerson Street Camp. We were given a proposal by the camp leaders, because most camps have an internal governance, and we brought it back to the city council in 2018. What if we use this as a model for a small camp management, marrying that camp with a church? And that's what has happened. Nickerson Street has become a fairly successful camp management between private and public management. This has been a pretty successful experiment. I've also visited the Deschutes camp, and I've interacted with them. Lastly, as a veterinarian, I take care of the pets in these communities for free. As a matter of fact, I just amputated a leg on a cat that was hit by a car yesterday. So I have a lot of experience with the folks that are homeless, and I have a lot of empathy.
Thank you. And Mr. Payne, do you have a question for Mr. Gauny?
I do. Thank you. So, Corey, public safety is a concern for many residents of all backgrounds, particularly for our Black residents and our other residents of color. How will you use a racial equity lens to make policy on council, and what experience do you have that will assist in this regard?
Thanks for the question, Dante. I agree with you. Public safety is a key issue. And everybody I've talked to from the BIPOC community moves to Olympia for one reason, because it is the most accepting place around. That's why people come here. And I think we need to continue that trend. I think we do need people of color as leaders in our community, most definitely, to come up and voice what those concerns are. I couldn't tell you right now. I have people in the BIPOC community I talk to. What are their safety and what are their public safety concerns? I have not gotten anything from them. The answer I get is they moved to Olympia because Olympia is the most equitable place that they could find to live. Now, I think those conversations need to be continuously open, and people need to be represented through their neighborhoods associations. They need to have their voice heard. The church behind my father's house, largely an African-American church. Talk to those people. What are their concerns in our community? That's how I would address those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Now each candidate will have an opportunity to provide a 1-minute closing statement. We'll start with Jim Cooper.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and Thurston Community Media for this wonderful public service. Also, thank you to the residents of Olympia and the voters for allowing me to serve for nearly 10 years. In that service, I'm the chair of the city's finance committee, president of the Metropolitan Parks District, the city's law enforcement and firefighters disability board. I'm also the chair of the Regional Housing Council, the Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and the Olympic Regional Clean Air Agency. I'm endorsed by organized labor and environmental groups alike. And if you'd like to find out more about my campaign, please visit electjimcooper.com, and I would love to have your vote. Thank you for being an Olympian.
Corey Gauny.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Thurston County League of Women Voters, Thurston Community Media. Thank you for all the other candidates for here to have a robust discussion with about the challenges our community faces. I think all of us share one thing in common, and that is a passion and a concern for our community. While we may have different approaches and different ideas on how to get there, we do care about our community. Please don't let it be said, this is where we need to come together as a community. I think I'm a representative that can do that to represent all aspects of our community. I'm endorsed by Democrats, I'm endorsed by Republicans to fill this nonpartisan position. I'm endorsed by labor, I'm endorsed by builders. I have a background in fire and emergency services. I studied business and economics. I have a project management certification. I'm very well-rounded. I lived 19 years overseas, and I've worked with people from all socioeconomic levels throughout my career. I think these are the tools we need, and a diversity of voices at the table and perspectives. I thank you for your time.
Lisa Parshley.
First, because I have not done it yet, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and all the sponsors for this debate. Because the best part about running in a campaign for a position is you get a chance to discuss these issues. And having a debate is no better way than to do that, to air all the different ideas. Because we've all stated we do have a problem, and it's a longstanding problem with social justice and equity, dismantling the long-term racism built into our very foundation of our government and country. We have to reimagine public safety. We have to recover from COVID. We have to work on homelessness and housing. We have climate change happening. We have sea level rise about to hit us. I'm Lisa Parshley. I'm running for re-election for Olympia City Council because I love Olympia and I love the work of City Council. On council, you're one person. You have to work with 6 other people. I feel like the last 4 years have given me that experience. And as Councilmember Cooper has said, we have 5 current crises that intersect. I believe in the future that with my experience, I'm the best for this position.
Dante Payne.
So I just want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters again, and also Thurston Community Media. And I want to say thank you to our community. It was an honor. It is an honor to have your support in the primary, and thank you so much. We have a lot of issues and challenges that we will need to address in the coming years. And I know that we have many perspectives on the issues on affordable housing and addressing homelessness, improving public safety and protecting our environment and our local economy. But what we need right now is we do need pragmatic, progressive, and bold leaders continue the great work of moving our city forward. And I believe that I am the best person to do this. We need folks who are not only experienced professionally, but have lived experience that they can apply to policy making in our city. And so thank you again to the residents of the city of Olympia for your support.
Talauna Reed.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for having this forum and TC Media. I want to apologize to the voters for being slightly distracted. What I want to share with you is that we don't need council members who know exactly what to say on a dime. We need council members who know what to do and who are willing to have a backbone enough to take a stand against the status quo. I'll be honest, I'm very concerned about the direction our city's headed. I believe that if we continue to follow the path we're on, Olympia will become unlivable for so many folks that live and work here. We as a city have the ability and the responsibility to do better, and it starts with electing the right people into office. As a Black woman who has personally experienced homelessness, racism, and getting that dreaded letter from my landlord that my rent is being raised yet, once again, I can assure you that I'm someone who will always prioritize the needs of and the well-being of the struggling Olympians. I, Talauna Reed, represent the diversity, the change, the strength to challenge the status quo that this council desperately needs. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your vote. Visit TalaunaForThePeople.com to learn more.
Spence Weigand.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, Thurston Community Media, and all of the sponsors that made this possible. I am a fourth-generation Olympian, and I love this city. I moved back to it, in fact, 25 years ago to raise my 3 children, and started a career as a real estate broker, which I think would suit me well for what I would be doing with the city council. I have a career bringing people together with common goals, but with disparate ideas of how to get there. I'm a collaborator, but I'm also results-oriented. I'd like Olympia citizens to ask if you, your family, your business, and your city are better off than it was 10 years ago. I promise to lead with compassion, but with common sense. I'm not as versed in the inner workings of the city as my opponent, but I'm frank, I'm smart, I'm hardworking, and I'm a quick study. I'm also not a career politician, which has probably been obvious today, but I'm not on a path to a springboard to a higher office either. I think our council too often thinks globally and acts locally. I think we should be thinking locally and acting locally. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Cooper, Corey Gauny, Lisa Parshley, Dante Payne, Talauna Reed, and Spence Weigand for participating in this forum. We also want to thank TC Media for producing the program and our co-sponsors, the Asian Pacific Islanders Coalition and Thurston Climate Action Team. The forum will be available on TC Media channels, the League of Women Voters website, and as a YouTube video. We are also producing a forum for the other Olympia City Council candidate positions, and they will also be available on the same sites. We are glad you've taken an opportunity to view this forum. We remind you to be a voter in the general election beginning October 15th and closing November 2nd, 2021. Thank you very much.